300 days. That is the amount of time an average backyard compost heap requires to turn into usable dirt. A whole year of waiting, observing, and secretly praying that some kind of transformation is taking place beneath that mound of dead yard waste. Most people who garden just accept this reality. Making compost is a sluggish process. That is simply nature's timeline. We just have to be patient. Or do we? Buried deep in a university study from the mid-20th century is a technique that shrinks that 300-day timeline down to just 18. Not 18 weeks, 18 days. And the secret ingredient that triggers this reaction costs around $3. Just a single handful of a white, crystal-like powder you can find at any rural supply shop. This isn't a sales gimmick. I am not pitching a product. This is verified science. It was proven under strict conditions, validated completely, and then mysteriously excluded from standard gardening advice for decades. Just consider who makes money when you believe soil takes a year to build. The corporations bagging up premium dirt, the makers of pricey plastic tumblers, the companies pushing special enzyme powders that cost 10 times more than the actual solution. None of them want you knowing how to make black gold in 2.5 weeks for the cost of a cup of coffee. That hidden truth has a price, and we have been footing the bill for years. But let's get into the actual technique, the precise measurements, the daily schedule, the single fatal error that will destroy your pile, and a completely natural zero-cost substitute that humanity has used since the dawn of agriculture. 1. The year-long trap and the invisible math. Here is a question we rarely stop to ask. Why do compost piles stop working in the first place? You gather up your autumn leaves, toss in some vegetable peels, maybe dump some grass and shredded mail on top, give it a good soak, and pat yourself on the back. Half a year later, the pile looks practically identical. Chilly, brittle, and stagnant, as if time stood still. People try to rescue it with extra water. Others shell out cash for a spinning bin, assuming airflow is the issue. A few dump old coffee grounds or fireplace ash over the top, praying for a spark. Yet, the pile remains freezing cold. The leaves don't break down. Soon enough, the pile becomes an eyesore in the back corner, and you find yourself driving to the nursery to buy bags of store-bought soil. The usual excuse is that nature is just taking her time. But that is only a fraction of the truth, and it masks the actual cause of backyard composting failures. The secret lies in a specific metric known to soil experts as the carbon-to-nitrogen ratio, the C/N ratio. And grasping this single concept alters everything you know about decomposition. Look at it like this. Carbon is your combustible material. It is the raw fuel, the timber for your campfire. Nitrogen is the spark. It is the essential building block that microscopic bacteria require to multiply, to thrive, to grow their numbers into the billions. If they lack nitrogen, these microbes are sitting on a mountain of fuel, but possess no ability to consume it. The absolute perfect balance for fast, relentless breakdown is exactly 25 to 30 parts carbon for every one single part of nitrogen. Once you strike that exact ratio, bacteria devour organic matter at a staggering speed. This is exactly where mainstream gardening tips fail us. Look at the chemistry of standard yard waste. Crisp fall leaves hover around 60 to 1. Wood shavings can hit 400 to 1. Ripped up cardboard is about 350 to 1. Pine needles sit near 80 to 1. Straw is roughly 75 to 1. Every last one of these materials is overwhelmingly loaded with carbon. Stack them all up, which is exactly how we are taught to make compost, and that ratio easily skyrockets, well past 100 to 1. When it gets that high, the microbial workers clock out. They aren't dead. The heap isn't poisoned. There simply isn't enough nitrogen to fuel their reproduction. The tiny organisms cannot forge new cells, so they enter a deep sleep. They just wait. And your yard waste sits there, totally inert, for months on end. Picture a massive construction site loaded with stacks of lumber, sheetrock, and steel. Plenty of supplies to keep a crew busy all year. But there isn't a single box of nails, not one screw, not a drop of glue. The builders have no way to attach anything together. So, they sit around. They wait. Nothing gets constructed. That is exactly the scenario inside a poorly balanced compost bin. You have the raw materials. You have the microscopic workers. But the absence of nitrogen completely paralyzes the job site. And here is a sobering truth that requires a moment of reflection. Every single year, massive amounts of yard debris are trucked off to garbage dumps where they decompose without oxygen, emitting methane, a greenhouse gas significantly more damaging than carbon dioxide. At the same time, those very same homeowners head to retail stores to buy synthetic fertilizers, spending hard-earned money to repurchase the exact nutrients they just tossed out. It is a terribly wasteful cycle once you actually look at it. So, the real question is this. What if fixing that math only took $3.10 of your time? 2. The $3 Activator. The true role of urea. The compound is known as urea. It takes the form of tiny white crystals. You can find it at almost any agricultural or garden shop. And it boasts one incredible trait. It holds 46% nitrogen by weight. That is the densest nitrogen level found in any standard granular fertilizer. Nothing else even comes close. A modest bag runs you just a few bucks. A single dose for a normal backyard heap takes just 100 to 200 grams, about one hefty handful. That is your entire investment. Now, the name urea might sound a bit chemical, synthetic, or perhaps questionable to those who have dedicated years to organic growing. But its history is important to understand because it shifts how you view this material. Every mammal alive, every hound, every stallion, every person creates urea naturally. It is a standard waste product of metabolism made every single day and flushed away without a second glance. The molecule itself is incredibly basic. A single carbon atom paired with an oxygen atom and two amine groups. Its origins are as natural as anything else on Earth. Back in 1828, a German scientist named Friedrich Wöhler successfully created urea using strictly non-living materials in his lab. That lone breakthrough completely rewrote the laws of chemistry. Prior to Wöhler's discovery, experts assumed organic compounds demanded some mystical life essence to form. He proved them wrong, paving the way for modern biochemistry. 100 years later, Sir Albert Howard, widely recognized as the pioneer of modern composting, dedicated decades in Indore, India, to perfecting a breakdown method centered entirely on stabilizing carbon and nitrogen. His main source of nitrogen was livestock manure, which naturally overflows with urea. This indoor technique laid the groundwork for practically all subsequent composting practices. Here is how you actually do it. Dissolve 100 to 200 grams of urea into a regular bucket of water. Pour that liquid evenly over your dormant, carbon-loaded compost heap. That bloated 60-to-1 ratio instantly plummets right into the sweet spot, sitting perfectly at 25-to-1. Within mere hours, a naturally present enzyme known as urease springs into action. It converts the urea into ammonium, a type of nitrogen that the microscopic bacteria can easily absorb and use. The bacterial colony, desperately hungry for protein, suddenly possesses exactly what it requires. Multiplication shifts into overdrive, temperatures begin to climb, and the dormant heap awakens. Yet, tossing in urea is merely the first step. What unfolds over the subsequent 18 days, driven by a very strict timeline, is the true heart of this breakthrough. 3. The 18-day furnace, exploring the Berkeley hot composting technique. In the middle of the 20th century, scientists at the University of California, Berkeley, engineered a method for composting that remains unmatched in its swiftness, effectiveness, and consistency. It is known as the Berkeley hot composting method, and it upgrades a basic backyard pile into something resembling a fine-tuned biological engine. The procedure is exact. Every single phase counts, and when executed properly, the outcomes are staggering. Day 1. Assemble the heap. Size is crucial. The absolute minimum volume is 1 cubic yard, 3 feet across, 3 feet deep, 3 feet high. Go any smaller, and the pile will bleed heat too fast. The center requires a thick, insulating outer mass to hold in the thermal energy produced by the microbes. Stack up your dry, brown matter crisp leaves, cut branches, torn cardboard, dry straw, and soak them thoroughly using your dissolved urea mixture. You are aiming for the moisture content of a tightly squeezed sponge, uniformly damp, but never dripping wet. Days 2 through 4. Walk away and do not touch it. This is tough for people who love to meddle, but you must fight the temptation. Beneath the exterior, a microscopic uprising has already begun. The bacteria, finely armed with both carbon energy and nitrogen building blocks, are multiplying at an explosive pace. Every new generation can double in as little as 20 minutes under the right environment. Their combined biological functions produce massive amounts of heat. Day 5. Open up your pile. Give it a turn. Move the cooler material on the outside into the middle and push the blazing hot center to the outer edges. The second you split that heap open, a heavy wave of steam billows up into the air. It is highly visible, dramatic, and impossible to miss. There is a distinct odor too, but it isn't the rotten stink of a bad compost bin. This smells vibrant, earthy, warm, like the ground in a dense woods right after a summer downpour, but incredibly strong. Slide a long compost thermometer right into the core of your newly turned pile and watch the needle jump. 130 degrees, 140, sometimes 150 or beyond. Just brush your hand against the outside. Even the exterior pushes out serious heat. The deep center is actually hot enough to give you a genuine burn. Your yard waste has transformed into a living furnace. At those extreme temperatures, the original bacteria, the ones that kick things off, can no longer stay alive. An entirely different breed of microbes steps in. They are known as thermophiles. These are heat-craving organisms that flourish in an environment that would instantly kill almost anything else. These thermophiles rip through stubborn plant stalks, waxy leaf surfaces, and hard, woody fibers that normal bugs can't even scratch. And this intense heat does much more than speed up the rotting process. When you hold temperatures above 131 degrees, weed seeds are completely cooked. Fungal spores are wiped out. Dangerous plant diseases, the kind that cause root rot and leaf blight, are thoroughly destroyed. The pile is actively cleaning itself while creating the ultimate garden fertilizer. From day 5 all the way to day 17, you must follow an every other day turning schedule. Each flip pushes the cool exterior into the hot belly and moves the broken down material to the outside. Each turn injects a massive rush of fresh oxygen. This keeps those heat-loving bacteria breathing and stops the pile from suffocating, which would cause nasty smells and grind the whole system to a halt. Here is a helpful trick to keep it simple. Write your turning days on a calendar. Day 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17. That is exactly 7 turns after you first build it. If you skip a turn, your oxygen levels plummet. The core shifts from a healthy, breathing environment into a suffocating one. It goes from a clean process to a sour, foul-smelling mess. Staying consistent is far more crucial than being perfect. A simple garden fork is all you need. No fancy tools necessary. Always test the wetness while you turn. If the stuff feels dry and dusty, spray it with a hose until you get that damp sponge feeling back. If it feels dripping wet, spread the pile out for a bit to let the water evaporate before you stack it back up. Getting the water right is just as vital as getting the nitrogen right. Day 18. The heat finally fades. The microscopic feeding frenzy comes to an end. And what is left behind looks absolutely nothing like the pile you started with. The dead leaves have vanished. The sticks are gone. The food scraps have completely disappeared. In their place is a rich, dark, crumbly substance with a deep, earthy aroma. Experts call this humus. It is simply the most precious material you can ever put in your garden. Grab a handful and squeeze. It holds its shape for a brief second before softly falling apart. Bring it close and take a breath. The scent is fresh, pure, and full of life. This is the exact smell of thriving earth. This is exactly what your vegetables want. A breakdown process that usually demands nearly a year is totally finished in 18 days. No pricey tumbling machine, no secret powder, no electricity, just the correct math, the right water level, the proper size, and the commitment to turn it exactly on time. And that word commitment brings us right to the most critical warning of this whole system. 4. The danger zone. The one huge mistake that turns this amazing trick into a total disaster. There is a very strong urge that traps almost everyone the first time they try this. The logic seems totally sound. If one handful of this nitrogen powder does wonders, dumping a whole bucket in should make it work even faster. That thought process guarantees a total failure. When you drown a heap in too much nitrogen, your perfect ratio is destroyed. The bacteria simply cannot eat the nitrogen fast enough, so the extra gas leaks out of the pile as ammonia. Your whole backyard will reek of a sharp, stinging, eye-watering odor. It is a blazing red flag that your chemistry is ruined. The very nutrient that was supposed to speed up your soil is literally vanishing into the air, totally wasted. But the terrible smell is just the start. An overloaded pile can shoot past 160 degrees. At that crazy temperature, even the heat-loving bacteria start to die off. The very tiny workers running the show cannot survive the inferno they helped build. The pile becomes totally dead. The breakdown stops completely. You might see a powdery white mold crawling through the center. That is a textbook sign of a heap that got way too hot, ran out of air, and practically baked itself to death. In very rare but real situations, especially if the materials are extremely dry and packed down hard, there is a genuine chance of spontaneous combustion. The internal heat gets so intense it reaches the burning point, and the yard waste turns to charcoal from the inside without a single spark. The rule is strict and unbending. Do not exceed 100 to 200 grams of urea for every cubic yard of waste. Do not add more. Weigh it out. Honor the math. For a normal 3 by 3 by 3 foot heap, one big handful is the perfect dose. 2 handfuls is the absolute limit. 3 handfuls means you are stepping into a disaster. Guessing the amount and tossing in a little extra for good measure is exactly how people ruin their compost. Taking a minute to use a kitchen scale will save you weeks of headaches waiting for a dead pile to bounce back. Here are a couple of safety steps to keep things smooth. Put on some basic yard gloves when you touch the dry powder, because the fine dust can bother your skin and eyes. Keep it away from your face, and lock this one chemistry rule into your brain. Never combine urea with superphosphate fertilizers. The chemical reaction turns into a gooey, useless, solid block that ruins both ingredients. Following the rules is the only thing standing between a perfect 18-day batch of soil and a stinking heap of ruined yard trash. The technique works like magic, but only if you respect the limits. Now, there is one last question that needs a straight answer. For anyone who strictly follows certified organic gardening, man-made urea is off the table. It is created in a factory, after all. So, what are organic growers supposed to do? As it happens, they actually have an even better option than they might realize. 5. The zero-cost natural solution. Earth's original nitrogen source. Official organic guidelines across the globe completely ban factory-made urea. That rule is well known and completely valid. But nature figured out a workaround for this long before organic certificates were even invented. The substitute is human urine. That might make you raise an eyebrow. But look at the science before you let your gut reaction take over. That synthetic powder you buy at the farm store was actually copied from the exact same urea that our own bodies make naturally every single day. The chemical makeup is completely identical. The nitrogen levels are solid and proven. Human urine is roughly 0.6% nitrogen by volume. It also carries strong doses of phosphorus, potassium, and vital trace minerals. And here is a statistic that usually changes minds. Over 80% of the nitrogen and 65% of the phosphorus we get from our food exits our bodies right through our urine. Every single day, We flush those brilliant fertilizers into the city sewer and send them off to a treatment facility. We literally throw away the exact nutrients needed to grow the food we just ate. If you are doing hot composting, you can pour at full strength right onto your dry yard waste. Because the pile is cooking at over 140 degrees, any worries about harmful bacteria are completely eliminated by the intense heat. This totally natural urea kicks off the exact same enzyme chain reaction. It nourishes the identical bacterial armies, and it fuels the same intense heat cycle as the stuff you buy in a bag. If you want to use it straight on your garden plants, outside of the compost bin, the normal mix is 1 part urine to 10 parts water. Pour it directly onto the dirt around the base of the plant, not on the leaves themselves. It acts as a mild, highly efficient, completely free liquid fertilizer. Tomatoes, peppers, spinach, and plants that demand heavy nutrients respond incredibly well. Put it down early in the morning or as the sun sets, when the earth is cool and it can soak in best. Doing this once every 2 to 3 weeks while your garden is growing will give your plants a consistent, balanced hit of nitrogen that works just as well as anything you can buy at a store. This isn't some weird new trend. Ancient societies throughout Asia, Africa, and Europe used human waste to grow crops for thousands of years. It is quite literally one of the oldest recycling loops in human existence. We take nourishment from the earth, use what our bodies require, and give the rest back to fuel the next crop. Rot turns into life. Waste turns into food. The loop is completed, and the earth remains fertile. It is a powerful reminder that anything, given time, can be restored. 6. The larger takeaway. What making dirt tells us about the phases of life. 18 days. That is the total time required to turn a neglected mound of dry leaves, vegetable peels, and dead branches into the absolute best, most vital substance you can put in your yard. The chemistry is undeniable. The system is verified. The expense is basically nothing. But there is a bigger lesson to pull from this that has nothing to do with gardening. Every single compost heap starts out as a pile of cast-offs. Things the world has discarded. Leaves that fell from a branch. The ends of carrots chopped off for dinner. Twigs snapped in a storm. Used coffee grounds dumped from a filter. On their own, every single item just looks like garbage. Finished. Useless. But that heap was never actually useless. It was simply waiting for the right spark, the right pinch of the right ingredient, the proper level of heat, and the readiness to be cracked open and mixed up. Once those specific elements lined up, the change happened faster than anyone thought possible. With the proper ratio, enough warmth, and the willingness to be turned over, all that garbage became the bedrock for the next generation of growth. No phase of life is useless. No hardship is without purpose. The silent times, the hard times, the seasons where nothing felt like it was moving, they were all just steps in a sequence leading to something deeper and more significant than what was there before. The change was always inevitable. It just required the right environment to kick off. Next time you see a pile of dead leaves gathering in your yard, try to see it differently. That isn't trash. That is potential energy, just waiting for the proper key to be turned. Whether you opt for a $3 bag of powder from the local shop or the completely free solution nature has offered since the beginning of time, the method remains identical. Get the math right. Size the pile correctly. Keep the water levels up. Stick to the turning schedule. And in 18 days, you will be holding a handful of rich, dark, beautiful humus. Absolute proof that change is always an option when the environment is right. That mound of yard waste isn't a job to do. It isn't a hassle. It is an incredible opportunity sitting right in front of you, just waiting for someone who finally understands its worth. If this video shifted your perspective on building soil, pass it along to a friend who has been staring at a dead compost bin all year. Make sure to subscribe for more lessons the earth has been trying to teach us all along. Take care of the earth. It always takes care of you right back.